In episode 6, 11's training continues, but they don't have a lot of time because Lieutenant Colonel Sanders is torturing the lone agent who is left behind about the whereabouts for 11. His big concern is the fact that 11 has gone rogue, and Dr. Owens is protecting her with hopes of selling her to the Soviets. For the time being, though, the agent is keeping his mouth shut. And that's good because, as Dr. Brenner puts it, they're teaching 11 to get her powers back, much like a doctor would teach a stroke victim to walk again. That doesn't happen overnight. He then takes her into a vault and shows her a bunch of videotapes and tells her that everything that happened in his lab, good or bad, was videotaped. She's going to use these videotapes to regain the power. She asks him, if this all happened, then why don't I remember? And he tells her, you don't want to. It's a defense mechanism that we have in our brain. Our brain doesn't want to remember bad memories, so it blocks them out. She then brings up the fact that her hand was covered in blood, and he tells her that was another memory, invading from your subconscious. The fact is, you have demons. That's why we must progress carefully. She heads into the deprivation tank and continues to try to go through her training again. One such exercise is playing Plinko, but directing the chip on what slot to fall into. She can't do it. She's getting frustrated. Her determination catches the eye of an orderly, and he tells her, you remind me of somebody. It's somebody I knew really well. It was one. 11 is shocked because she was always told by Dr. Brenner that one never existed. He tells her that sometimes Dr. Brenner lies. And when she asks him, where is one? He says, we'll save that story for another day. It doesn't have a happy ending. But he was a lot like you. He was struggling, and then one day, it just all clicked. He was able to get his power from a memory in his past, something that made him sad, but also angry. He then asks 11, do you maybe have a memory like that? And she has tons. Right before they get interrupted by Dr. Brenner, who's walking in to address all the kids, the orderly tells her, these people here are not what you think. Dr. Brenner then starts an exercise with the kids where they're standing in a circle. And through their mind power, they're going to try to push the other out of it. 11 is thought of as the weakest one, but she's going to go up against 2, who is thought of as the strongest one. 2 has dismantled just about everybody he's faced so far. But when it comes to 11, she embarrasses him, and she uses the technique that the orderly talked about, using a memory from her past that angered her. The defeat of 2 comes to the surprise of all of the kids, and 2 has a lot of supporters. So 11 is not the most popular kid right now. Because she won, she gets some time alone in the Rainbow Room for an extra hour. But she hears a noise in the distance and decides to follow it. And through a window, she sees that orderly who helped her is being tortured. And Dr. Brenner is watching all of it. She gets scared and heads back into the Rainbow Room, but she's not alone this time. It's 2 and a bunch of his friends. They're out looking for revenge on 11. And using their powers, they throw her around the room. Right before he leaves, 2 tells 11, if you let Papa know that we did this, we will kill you. She's upset, distraught, heads over, sees herself in the mirror, but the memory of what she did in 1976 starts invading her subconscious once again. It forces her vitals to spike in the real world, and Brenner and Owens have to pull her out again. But when she gets brought out of the deprivation tank, she tells Brenner, I know what happened. I know I killed them all, didn't I? As 11 is having this epiphany, her boyfriend is trying to get to her immediately. But Mike, the Byers boys, and Argyle do make that pit stop in Utah. They arrive at Susie's place the next day, and when they knock on the door, it's not like they expected. Susie's a pretty big holy roller, but the house mirrors more of a Neverland kind of vibe. Kids just running around doing whatever they want with no real adult supervision. They start walking around and asking every kid if they know where Susie is, but none of them seem to. They finally, though, run into what's supposed to be the adult supervision. It's Susie's older sister, Eden. And when Argyle sees Eden, he is immediately in love. But the rest of the group just wants to know where Susie is, and Eden points them in the right direction. They find her and explain the situation, but unfortunately, she no longer has her computer. After changing Dustin's grades, that guilt really weighed on her, and she had to admit to her father what she did. And as a punishment, he took her computer away, putting it in his office where he basically lives, doing work nonstop. He doesn't leave. But then she gets an idea on how she can use the computer without her father finding out. She's going to need the help of her brothers and sisters, though. Her one brother has a propensity to pull the circuit breaker, zapping the entire house of power. She tells him to do that, and when he does, her father gets so angry that he leaves the room, leaving the computer. Susie and the gang sneak into the room, and when the power is restored, they hop on and they're able to geolocate the location of Nina. Although Susie throws a lot of big words out there, like internet, that the guys do not understand but soon will. They now know they need to head to Nevada. But while they were getting the coordinates, Argyle was nowhere to be found because he snuck away with Eden and got baked in his van. Unfortunately for Argyle, he has to say goodbye, and the guys get on their way. But back in their old hometown of Hawkins, the death of Patrick has really rattled Jason. You would think maybe the fact that Jason watched it happen would exonerate Eddie. Far from it, though. Jason blames Eddie even more, thinking that Eddie sold his soul to the devil to gain these powers. He gives a statement to the police, and the police don't really believe him because, it sounds pretty crazy. But 3 teenage deaths, they now need to address the media about it. They not only tell the media about the latest death, but also let everybody know that they have a person of interest, and it's Eddie Munson. Nancy, Robin, Lucas, Max, Dustin, Steve, they see the police chief giving this press conference, and they know that they're in trouble. The police chief ends it by letting the community know that he will be taking questions later that night in a town hall setting. Eddie wasn't about to go back to Reefer Rick's, so he headed to a place called Skull Rock that's not too far away, and he radios Dustin and the crew of its whereabouts. On the way there, the group gets lost, and Dustin and Steve start arguing about where they're supposed to go. Steve figures that he knows exactly where to go. He used to take girls there to make out. Dustin decides to use this crazy thing called a compass. What a nerd. Lucas, though, is depressed. He was friends with Patrick. But he then puts a connection together with Patrick and the rest of Vecna's victims. One day, Patrick came to practice, and he had a black eye. He made an excuse that nobody believed, so it's clear that all of Vecna's victims have trauma, including Max. And then Nancy and Robin also walked together, and Robin hinted to Nancy that maybe she should consider getting back together with Steve. She pussyfoots around the issue, saying she just wants happiness for her friends, and Nancy denies having any feelings for Steve whatsoever, but did notice the fact that Robin considers her a friend. And since they're friends, she decides to rant to Robin about how she is mad at Jonathan for not showing up during break. They then come across Skull Rock, and Eddie pops out. And this is the first time that Dustin is seeing Eddie since everything that's happened, so he gives him a giant hug. They then start talking about what they're going to do about Vecna. It's going to be a lot harder without 11. And that's when Dustin has an unbelievable discovery. He was wrong about where Skull Rock was because his compass wasn't working right. Because what can affect a compass is an electromagnetic field, like a gate. He realizes that Vecna is opening up gates all over Hawkins. Every time he murders somebody, he opens up a small gate. If they can get in that gate, they have a way to get to Vecna. They don't have any other better ideas, so they decide to start following the compass. They do have a big issue, though. That town hall meeting kicks off, and people want answers, and they want to know where Eddie is. While the police chief is trying to get order, Jason and the rest of the members of the basketball team storm in and give their theory on Eddie, saying that he's been taken over by the devil because of this cult that he's in called Hellfire. He stirs up enough fear in the community that now you've got just about everybody looking out for not only Eddie, but all the members of Hellfire, including Dustin and Lucas, which is horrifying to their parents. This is a big problem for the police. They don't want vigilante justice. So the police want to find Eddie and the rest of the group before Jason and the basketball team and the rest of the community do. They do have a lead. They end up finding the station wagon that they were riding in near Skull Rock. So the police head over there to see if they can find any hints on where Eddie is. And Eddie and the rest of the gang have found their way back to the lake. That's where the compass points. Steve, Robin, Nancy, and Eddie get in the boat while Lucas, Max, and Dustin stay on the shore. There's only really one way to go to see if there's a gate, and that's down. So Steve dives into the water, and after about a minute, he finds the gate. But the cops have found them. Just to save the mission, Max ends up getting the police's attention so Steve, Robin, Eddie, and Nancy can continue to try to figure out what's going on with the gate. But as Steve comes up to the surface and is explaining to the group just how big the gate is, he's pulled back under by something, and he's pulled through the gate. He's pulled into the upside down where he is attacked by a bunch of flying monsters, and he's being eaten at. When he was pulled underwater, though, Nancy wasn't about to just let him die. She dove right in after him. And Robin followed suit, and Eddie wasn't going to be the only one left in the boat, so he followed them as well. Not great, probably slightly worse than what's going on in Russia. Yuri, Murray, and Joyce survived the plane crash, and now Murray and Joyce have the upper hand. They tie up Yuri and tell him that if he doesn't help them get Hopper back, they're just going to leave him out there to die. Yuri ends up reluctantly agreeing and telling them that they need to stop off at the warehouse where he stashes supplies first. If they hurry, they can reach the prison by nightfall. And they need to hurry, because that day, Hopper, Enzo, and the rest of the prisoners are taken outside, and they think they're going to be attacked by that monster, but they're surprised to be escorted into another room where there is a feast. Hopper is reluctant to eat anything, and one of the prisoners starts saying that they're feeding them because they want them to be strong to fight this monster. And Hopper just laughs and says, "You guys have no idea what you're talking about." They want to give this monster, which we call a demigorgon, a challenge. That is us. So they're having us eat the nutrients that they want the demigorgon to get. And the fact that Hopper is so serious about this, saying that he's seen one and he's fought one and how dangerous it is, scares all of the prisoners. But along with Enzo, he comes up with a plan. When they get out of the feast, him and Enzo fake like they're in an argument and start fighting. The guards jump in, and Hopper attacks one of them. The Russian guards are able to put Hopper in his place, beating him up pretty good and throwing him back in his cell, where they let him know that soon he's going to die. Enzo asks Hopper, was that even worth it? And Hopper pulls out a lighter that was used by the guard who he attacked. He says, yeah, it was worth it, because there's one thing that can kill a demigorgon, and it's fire. Hopper now has a lighter and gasoline and a plan. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.